We talk LSU football on a regular basis with Lon Phillips Sullivan, LSU Odyssey. Lon joining us from Baton Rouge, where he's covering the Tigers front and center, up close and personal this week. Lon's down Baton Rouge for all the news conferences and spring practice. Lon, how you doing tonight?
We're doing great. Celebrating my father's 70th birthday up
Happy
in here.
birthday.
Yes, indeed. And it's been a great time. Almost everything that could have worked out has worked out, Mark. It's been a great time. Everybody's been welcoming. Thank you to Michael Bonnet and the media staff there at LSU for allowing us aboard and letting us check LSU out front and center. This has been great fun.
So I've got to go back 20 years plus. The last time I was on a spring practice field and covering most of the time Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss at that time. So Lon, with a great accomplishment here, just to receive media credentials at a big-time school. So that is not easily done. So Lon and LSU Odyssey able to, again, get the media credentials for spring practices, and Lon has been down there the entire week. So first and foremost, let's go to the practice field. And everybody wants to hear about Jaden Daniels, of course. And Miles Brennan is still kicking. He's still around and still saying, hey, don't forget about me. So Daniels versus Brennan.
Well, that was there. The first thing that drew everybody's attention in the media, a pack of wolves going out there right when the fence door was pulled, roll away the stone by Michael Bonnet. Everybody and I got to say, we led the pack. We're flying out there, and you could see that everybody was kind of huddled together. The red jerseys for the quarterbacks now. It used to always be gold for LSU with the quarterbacks, but now red. And you could see Jaden Daniels, number 5, coming out there, and he's a lot. He is not this statuesque Adonis athlete to the eye, but I don't think he really needs to be. There's really not too much that could tell you from this spring practice about what kind of quarterback he could become this season or even next. But he seemed polished. He seemed okay. Miles Brennan, I think, told me the most, really. Like, it seemed more like Jaden Daniels was just getting into the swing of things. Miles Brennan kind of had some intensity, some zip to every pass he made, was kind of had some energy to it. And then they did some simulated drives with the offensive lineman, receiver, tight end combinations, flanking them, simulated drives, and just kind of quickly doing it. A lot of tempo, Mark, practicing a lot of tempo. They'd have one quarterback come in for a few reps, shuffle him out. Miles Brennan led the charge, and then it was Jaden Daniels, then it was Garrett Nussmeier, and then, of course, Walker Howard. And it was very intriguing. I think Miles Brennan looked the sharpest, but what can that tell you? It was just a spring practice. It feels like Jaden Daniels still just getting his feet wet at LSU, getting his feet wet into spring practice, really. He's just barely arrived onto campus. Miles Brennan seems like he's been, conditioning, working hard with the team for the last few weeks. He's kind of more hit the ground running. But, I saw a lot of good signs from the quarterbacks there. There was a lot of competition. Joe Sloan, Mark, he was hot out there. He was getting after the quarterbacks. He was demanding energy nonstop. He was getting a little pissed off at a few guys, and we got footage of it there on LSUodyssey.com where he's lighting up one of the quarterbacks for something, and he did not stop the entire practice that we were allowed to watch. He was very hot, and he was flying around, jumping at the quarterbacks. Of course, everyone's going to, some people will start ordaining him as the next Joe Brady or something. But no, I think he had a different flavor to him. Joe Sloan, maybe it sounded like Coach Jerry Sloan from the Jazz out there with his his barking, but it was awesome. I love to see that type of coaching. He was teaching as well.
Really good stuff with Lon Phillips Sullivan, LSU Odyssey. So head on over there, lsuodyssey.com. Lon and the rest of the staff there have been down in Baton Rouge at LSU camp the entire week. They're going to be there through Monday and getting a first-hand look at the 2022 LSU Tigers. And, of course, you went to the news conferences with Brian Kelly and both coordinators, correct?
It's just been Brian Kelly so far, but
Okay.
tomorrow we're expected to have Kelly and then some assortment of coaches and then 4 players. And by the way, thank you for the nice comments, Mark. That was very nice of you to say about the site. But yeah, we're supposed to have Kelly, 4 players. 12:30 p.m. is when we're supposed to get availability. I'm not sure how long that practice will last, but I'm thinking it's going to be far more than the 25, 30 minutes that we got just the other day. So it should be interesting to see who we get to talk to. I'm hoping for Robert Steeples. I'd love to ask that man a few questions. I'm really intrigued by what he has planned for his future, for the future of DBU as the new cornerbacks coach of LSU. It'll be interesting, Mark, for tomorrow.
Lon, what are your impressions of Brian Kelly?
Oh, okay. He's been so bizarre in a good way. I love it because everything you've heard about him, he has turned it on its head. There's been organization that I've just loved. Everything has been so organized, even down to a T, even with regards to the media, where we can sit, writers in the front, people right here, everything's so regimented. This is where everyone goes. It's very alien to a lot of LSU media, especially LSU media. We're saying, this is the first intense practice we've seen in a long time. Usually players are just running through the turnstiles. People are just, yeah, rah, rah, rah. And every time I've watched practice footage, watched a lot over the last 3-4 years, especially, it's just been kind of exactly what they were kind of saying. Just a lot of be seen and, kind of look around, look cool. This was a lot different, Mark. This was intense. There was some organization there. There was some coordination. You saw Kelly kind of shuffling between each position group. And he would have, I think it was Will Redmond who he was talking to mostly. And then I believe J.R. Belton at other times, kind of checking in with certain positions, mostly on the offensive side. Kelly would bring them all together and stuff like that at times, going over, checking it with Cortez Hankton. Frank Wilson was going at some of the running backs at times. Noah Kane isn't there yet on campus, but we saw John Emery up close and personal. He looked great. He looked in good shape, catching the football out of the backfield as well. With Kelly, though, the culture change has taken effect, Mark. He's also a kind of a funny guy, too, in the media room. It took me by surprise during his first press conference, and it continues to take me by surprise, some of his more whimsical comments. But, there's guys he's been able to convince to change their habits almost overnight, Mark. I don't know how he's done it. There's guys who are hurt, who shouldn't be there, who usually have every excuse to not be in the facility. They're there working through like holidays and all sorts of things when they're still hurt. Dellinger, I saw him in the facility working, walking through into the cafeteria, hanging out. They're still involved. He wants the guys to still be involved. He had no problem being very candid about his relationship with Kayshon Boutte, saying that I know it. He literally, before he had a drink of water, he said, "I know his last name," and then drank his thing of water. And it was like, what? That's all he knew, basically, was just his last name. But then he expanded and kind of was like, you could tell he was amused by something with Kayshon. There was something, that a showdown he had where Kayshawn and him had some type of maybe a disagreement. I don't know. But all I know, I'll say this right now that is of note. When I asked M. Booty, Kayshawn's father, about the comments, he had no problem with it. He said they were on target. He loved it. He had no problem with what Brian Kelly said. I think it was almost Brian Kelly trying to light a fire under Kayshawn and say, like, let's bring it. Like, almost, I don't know how to explain it. He's playing a psychological game, almost the type of games that Phil Jackson would play with his guys back in the Bulls era with the media. I think those type of games were there, and I the Booty family had no problem with it. It's very interesting. Brian Kelly, he's sowing the seeds of this project. Whether it takes this season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, LSU are going in the right direction, Mark, because I just feel there is a cohesion, there is a strength, there is a mindset, there's a mentality. There's just a building blocks here. They identified exactly what holes in the team they had to fill with this tattered roster. They attacked them the best they could. They had no problem scaring off Miles Brennan by going and getting another quarterback too. Like, everything is about the betterment and the solidification of the team.
Yeah, Brian Kelly, there's no question that he is the most successful coach at Notre Dame since Lou Holtz, and he left that program in much better standing than what he found. He found a program that was going 7-6, 8-5, and he lifted it to college football playoff prominence on 3 different occasions, 2 in the playoffs and 1 BCS championship game, and a 4th-rated recruiting class when he took off for LSU. So he knows how to build a program. He knows how to, you touched on the organization. He obviously has been around the block a few times, so he knows what he's doing, and he knows what he wants, and he knows how to run it. So it will be interesting.
I mean, even down to the tiniest details, Mark. Everything, just when the media will be allowed in, all these rules were so foreign to everyone in the media crew around. They were so like, this is so much more different, so much more intense. These guys have been around LSU for a long time. I probably shouldn't name any of these guys. You can probably guess who they are. These are the top, like, the biggest media names around LSU you can think of. And they were all saying, this is way different. We haven't seen this since Saban. There's a few who had been around since Saban, and they were like, wow. And, it's very interesting to me that, there were certain people from these prior regimes Kelly chose to keep on. And I think that, guys say, for instance, like the media man, Michael Bonnet, who'd been there since the Saban era. It's very interesting that he chose to keep him on. I think he liked Bonnet's mentality. And then you look at just Brad Davis, offensive line. Obviously, he has the pedigree, but it's also the mentality. Everyone he's kept on. J.R. Belton as well. His, who I've been told is like his secret right-hand man. Director of recruiting, I believe, director of scouting. These are all the people that he's got these very secret, he's laying the groundwork, Mark. And I just love, everything has been thought about very thoroughly with Brian Kelly. And I just think he's a step ahead. I don't know how long it will take, Mark, to win championships or go to college football playoffs. But what I saw was a team that has completely bought into what Brian Kelly is preaching. And it seems like this staff has been out in force. I just cannot wait to see more tomorrow. I am just itching to go see more.
Based on what you've seen so far, Lon, and also, again, it's been 20 years or so, but I understand what the challenges are of covering a spring practice. But there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information that's passed on from media member to media member. So whether that's just information you've gathered or what you've seen your own 2 eyes and perspective. Anybody else that's popped this first week or set of spring sessions that anybody of note?
Well, going in hand with what Kelly's bringing. You know, it's Jake Flint's conditioning, and the whole team was just absolutely in peak conditioning. You know, I way far more advanced conditioning than I've seen in a while. But because of that, specifically because of that, receiver Jeray Jenkins looked absolutely stacked, Mark. Far better conditioning than I've ever seen him. That surprised me. Jeray's always had the length, but now he had that thickness to add to it. Chris Hilton, watched him up close make some nice catches. He was always very, burner, kind of, more thinner receiver profile. Now he's got that built thickness as well. It's like Cortez Hankton knows exactly the type of mold of receiver he wants to build in the weight room with Jake Flint's help as well. And they're doing that. I've seen massive physical progress with them. For the defensive line, Mekhi Wingo, seeing him pop out there, I really feel like this is very interesting defensive line setup we're having for this season, Mark. We're going to be using a lot more athletic interior defensive linemen this season. I saw a lot of 3-4 setups, interestingly enough. But, Mekhi Wingo, defensive end at Missouri, now he's shifted to that 3-4 DT spot. And it seemed like they had no problem going with a more finesse lineup with that interior 3 of the 3-4. It was just very intriguing setups there. Matt House, Jamar Kane seemed to be working in concert, linebackers and defensive line coach. Jaden Daniels, he stuck out to me because he was the one everyone wanted to see. Everyone wanted to check him out. But once again, there wasn't any – I just feel like he's still settling in there. Garrett Nussmeier, he had a lot of urgency to what he was doing, but it felt like the play selection collectively, the performance of his unit just wasn't up to par. His plays were disjointed, and that was really not his fault. Walker Howard, he made some fantastic throws out there, all while he was dealing with some serious injury, some pain right here in his thumb, hand injury, as Brian Kelly candidly also revealed. So they were doing a clapping cadence, and Walker was clapping and, said, "Hey, I'm having pain in the clap, doing the clap." And so they changed it to a vocal cadence. And Kelly, of course, was like, because, we're the smartest coaches in the world, we were doing a clapping cadence while he had a messed up thumb. Like, Kelly's just making he just says the weirdest stuff, and he's just like very dry. And I got to be honest, Mark, I was kind of just sitting there like laughing. And I think Kelly may have noticed that I was laughing. And I think he was at least this guy gets it. Like, he was so dry, so funny, and so just weird. And 99% of the media there were just like, what's he saying? What's this guy doing? I'm just like, this guy is funny. Kelly has brought back a passion and a verve and an intensity to LSU football that's always been there. But I feel like he's elevated that, Mark. I feel like he's taken the professionalism to the next level. I feel like he's taken the desire above and beyond. And, that desire might not equal championships immediately. That desire, the organization, this staff, this group of players might not equal titles, Mark. But what it's building, the project it's building, it's going to be far more productive than what he produced at Notre Dame, which was still an incredible run. I really feel a 10-year contract, Mark, 100 years. LSU have put a lot of faith, a lot of backing, and a lot of trust into Brian Kelly's decisions and every pull of the trigger that he's making here. I have to feel that this is going to pay dividends for LSU. I just have to, unless some crazy unforeseen thing happens. I think Kelly is really on the right road here, Mark.
Yeah, I certainly have to admit, and I'm on record as saying my initial response was this is a peculiar fit for LSU, just being a guy from the North, but there have been a number of guys that are outside of the SEC footprint and grew up in the North that have succeeded in the SEC. Nick
Exactly.
Saban, we can start with him. So it's not uncommon. And again, like we discussed a few times after his hiring, LSU was obviously looking for somebody that could win on the field, of course, but they were also looking for somebody that had a level of respect and could run a program that would be beyond, um, reproach and would not be calling into question some of the antics under Les Miles and Coach O.
Absolutely. Like, Mark, completely different tone. Completely different tone. And it's not like any of the wild luster that has made LSU awesome in the past, and we're still the bad boys of the SEC. I mean, that's never going to change, Mark. It's never going to stop. But at the same time, we're not going to be the bad boys that we're just doing stuff that just is bad, really bad, not just the bad boys in tone kind of, you
Yeah.
know,
A
we're
vibe, an attitude,
we're
not.
gonna rough you up. Yeah, this was the really negative, evil stuff that was going on. Darius Guy stuff, people like that. And they've obviously made such a smart move in doing anything to turn the page from that, Mark, and literally just anything. And Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley was the sexy pick. Lincoln Riley was the smokescreen pick. And while including us, we're going head on Lincoln Riley, he goes for Kelly. It was just brilliant because, and the second I heard it was Brian Kelly, for a second I was like, what? And then I thought about it, and I remember one of my buddies was like, Don was like, I love it. I love it. And I kind of like, Don is a smart guy. And then I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God, this isn't maybe what people want, but this is what LSU need. And it was just like seeing Kelly do the press conference, seeing him set this all up, great. Seeing it in person, Marks, being able to be a part of LSU, what they're doing, just even for a few days, getting an inside view of it, it's pretty stunning. I'm really, really pleased with the turnaround here in such a short time. I know the NCAA is still knocking on the door. I know there's still, warning signs and on the horizon with that, but I feel the concessions LSU have made, the relationships certain LSU athletic directors have with certain NCAA members by marriage will help this program and going forward. I really think penalties, some scholarships, possibly things like that. I think maybe we've seen the worst of that.
Well, again, I don't want to draw a direct parallel between Notre Dame and LSU. They're very different cultures, places of the country, all that sort of thing. But they are both big time football programs at the very top of the list. And Brian Kelly took what was a marginal, stagnant situation at Notre Dame and lifted it to about as high as it could go, higher than it's been in 30 years. And now he's got the same challenge at LSU, a place that he'll be able to acquire even better talent. He's got a certain different challenge, of course, in the SEC Western Division, but
Yes.
better talent as opposed to Lincoln Riley. And I'm not saying that Lincoln Riley will not succeed at USC. That remains to be seen. But Lincoln Riley was handed the keys. He didn't have to build anything. He was handed the keys to a top 5 program at Oklahoma, and he just maintained. There's a complete difference between taking over a top 50 program and making it a top 5 or 10 program like Brian Kelly did versus Lincoln Riley just maintaining.
Oh God! And you could even argue, Mark, to echo your perfectly stated point. You could even argue that Kelly paved the foundations for Cincinnati to become
Absolutely.
Another college football playoff appearance here with Luke Fickell. I mean, definitely, because I mean, he just knows how to build programs, and LSU didn't need a program builder; they needed a program rebuilder, a reloader, and someone who knew how to attract top talent in the transfer portal as well. What Kelly has done in the transfer portal market, using the LSU brand now, it's like my buddy A.D. Perkins said, when Kelly got this job, it was almost like the handcuffs came off. You know, he had been handcuffed by academic restrictions, by maybe even religious circumstances with his job, with his job at Notre Dame, people not wanting to go there because of the Catholic Church, whatever religious things people had. That always happens. BYU will always have problems with that. Just, we'll leave that to the side. He had academic stuff, of course, all sorts of reasons why, just in his way. Now he comes to LSU. None of that's in the way with recruiting. And he's got a top staff who know how to do it nationally and now locally too in Louisiana, and who can even show him a little how it's done as well. I think that's very humble by Brian Kelly to acquire, keep as many Louisiana coaches on his staff, specifically Frank Wilson, who can kind of show him and, Brian Pulley and some of his more Notre Dame-centered staff members, show him how to recruit Louisiana even better.
Lon Phillip Sullivan, LSU Odyssey. He's been at Tigers camp the entire week. He's got a few more days there. He has collected a ton of information. I'm sure the articles are amazing, and video footage. Go to lsuodyssey.com. You're talking about one of the very top programs in the country with one of the very top coaches. If you're an LSU fan, I don't even have to say anything else. You should be on LSU Odyssey. But even if you just love the SEC, you root for Alabama, Ole Miss, whomever else, you got to, of course, know your opponents and know your enemies. So check out the work there with lsuodyssey.com.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, my man. Thank you so much.
Lon, we appreciate it. You have a great rest of your trip.
You too, my man. Go Tigers.